All right, let's go, guys. We are all distracted. People are trying to take our attention. So let's put a block to it, right? It's an important time of year. We don't want any more distractions, right? All right, so I'm going to share this link. And I'm Dr. Mary Retzel. I love to share neuroscience to help people nourish and flourish, as well as to further people. So, I just think it's so vitally important to know how that thing between our ears works. So, that we know how to navigate it, right? So let me just send this link to somebody who just missed one of my webinars. All right, so let's go. So how you doing? Put it in the chat today. How are things going? We're going to talk about beating neuromarketers at their own game, right? And so, there's a lot of folks out there who are trying to grab our attention. So let's get started. So how do we know, where they're working, what they're doing? Well, first, let's just take a deep breath and imagine if people weren't trying to steal our attention every time we take a turn or we're at work. And, I once calculated I have 12 ways of people that get to me at work, right? And so we want to think about that. Like, how are we blocking that? How are we, number one, being aware of who's trying to take our attention, why it's important that they don't take it, because when we actually are using our attention, we can live fully in our strengths and gifts. And today in this world, we need everyone living fully in their strengths and gifts, right? So how do we find our focus during the day? Well, believe it or not, number one is when you're in a fun state, when you're having fun, you need to make sure in your week you put some things that are fun for you. So fun is a lighthearted time, usually laughing, you're with other people. You're not judging yourself. So in a neurologic sense, in a neurophysiologic, like how that thing between our ears is working, it's a great sense because our sympathetically, like our stress levels are low because usually we're laughing, we're interacting, we're not focused on us, we're focused on the interaction with other people. So number one is always to put some fun things in your busy work week. So put it in the chat. Do you intentionally put stuff into your week that are fun? A lot of times like, oh, I got to get this done and this done and this done. Like today I'm thinking about projects for the spring that, presentations I'm giving and what needs to be done and who's going to do the slides and who's going to do the keynote and who's going to get it all ready. So or I'm gonna, in an hour and a half or so, play mahjong with my friends and just stop, have fun, and just interact and just laugh a little bit, right? Because that's also a great way to reset our focus and reset our neurologic system, our sympathetic versus parasympathetic. So we have two settings, if you want to think of this between our ears and our body systems. We have the focus, the get things done, the high stress, the attention setting, and then you have the relaxation setting, the rest and digest setting, and that's where the fun lives. So if you want to build your focus setting, you have to build your parasympathetic so that you have a balance. Because if you just use up this focus setting, you need to come over here and build your fun setting and your relaxation setting to reset your focus setting. Okay, so if you want to focus, you also have to put fun and relaxation into your life. Okay, because fun generally is physically, you're doing something with somebody else, you're moving around. It's not usually just sitting, although people who game may think something different. Usually, you're growing, you're learning something, maybe you're doing something new. That's why it's got your attention. And then also, how do you protect what is between your ears? So that brain that lives, between our ears, how do we protect it so it can help us focus? So if you want to get a lot done, if you want this world to be a different place and you want to be living fully in your gifts and strengths, then we need to make sure that we build our protection of what's between our ears. So first thing, how we, make sure we can focus and be busy and intentional in this world of ours. And we want to beat all, the craziness that's going on. We want to live in our gifts. Number one, we want to put fun into our life, even when life seems really nuts right now. Okay. Because that's when we're connecting and we're resetting our ability to focus and be solution-based. So make sure you have some of that relaxation time and fun in your life. Number two, you're going to protect what's between your ears. So socializing, so being with other people, talking with other people in renewing relationships. So things that are people that are fun to be around, that you enjoy talking with, those also build our ability to also focus and get our good solution brain going. Um, the other thing is that we have emotional synchrony with others. So if you hang around people who are stressed, upset, angry all the time, that is like quote unquote contagious. So if you want to go out and find people who are a little more relaxed, a little more intentional, a little bit more focused, those will be contagious. So you know that old saying, like we're like the five people we hang around. It's emotionally that works as well. That is contagious for us. We take each other's vibes, right? We borrow each other's emotional levels. It's contagious after we're in a room with somebody for a while or interacting with somebody for a while. So be careful who you hang around. Just be intentional about who you spend your time with. And then distractions. How do we let people in, and when do we let people distract us? And what are neuromarketers doing to know how to distract us? Well, they watch our pupil size to see if we're interested in something. So a lot of things happen and they can see in our face and our face muscles, our pupils, our attention towards something, even brain waves, if they put stuff on your scalp to listen to the brain, or you're in a special kind of MRI called functional MRI. Neuromarketers look at our responses to something, responses to an image, responses to a certain emotion that gets us more attuned or giving attention to something. So a lot of things that grab our attention that then gets us to spend money is subconscious. So we're not even necessarily aware of it so fast, some of these reactions. So we respond to certain colors, certain images, certain emotions, and that will get our attention. Even if we started the day thinking like, today I want to do, three things are really important to me. But then, you go on your phone and you're distracted by, yeah, that's happened to me. So many things, right? And then suddenly an hour and a half goes by and you've watched those Dollar Tree Instagram reels. Okay. So we have to be careful who we let in to our attention. Who do we share our attention with? Because that's all we have, right? Our attention is how we get things done, how we problem solve, how we interact with other people. So make sure that you are giving full value to your attention. Okay. And then how do we fine tune our energy when things are exhausting? You've had a long day at work, you didn't take any breaks, you're toast, but you still have more work to do. You want to keep going, you want to get it done, but you've just worked straight through the day. So occasionally you need to at least look at pictures of nature, look outside and look at nature, or go out for a walk, because nature helps to ground us. And you hear about nature bathing, walking out in nature. Again, it helps to build our relaxation mode so that we can then go back and recharge our focus mode. So we can't just focus all day long. We have to take scheduled breaks with the things that build our relaxation levels, our parasympathetic system. So what does that? Nature does that. People that we interact with that we appreciate, so people, friends and family that you appreciate interacting with. Furry pets do that. I guess, not scaly pets, not like fish and things. That's what the research says. So if you have a cat or a dog, those kind of things, those are renewing if you work from home. And then we have to watch, the thoughts that we have, so I was realizing I went to go see, I knew I was going to go to my aunt's Thanksgiving dinner at her memory care. And I was just worried that it would be she'd be upset and it'd be hard to leave and it would be sad. And I was just worried about it because she gets a little bit anxious when she's around, a lot of other people, or when things don't look familiar to her, which unfortunately is a lot because she has dementia. So I was worried a lot about this event, but then I went and she did okay. And it was, calm, and she did fine. And she was happy throughout it. And she was trying to talk to other people, and she can only do so much. But, there's something I worried about it, and I left all that energy. So sometimes the suggestion is to tune into emotions. What is my emotion then? So it's fear, it's sadness. I just have to list emotions and just see them like weather. And just see them, because they may also be distracting to us and or taking our energy for something that really we can't change that event. Or I could have prepared. I could have looked up some new ways to deal with folks with dementia that were upset. so that I could help her more during that time. And then the other thing we want to do is, we want to make sure our work matters, right? And so, how do we create an impact in this world? We want to put people around us that are also trying to learn the same thing we're learning. Like I mentioned, I'm learning Mahjong, so I'm hanging out with people learning Mahjong. So when you're trying to succeed at something, you want to put people around you that are also trying to succeed in something similar. We call that accountability group. So, I run Brain Fresh, welcome. And Brain Fresh is, I use it neuroscience to further people. And I like to share neuroscience tools so people can get to new levels. Where do they want to go to? What is important to you at this time? So we do something called the WAG. So that's our Women Accountability Group, where we get together and what are you working on? How can we support you moving forward? Just one small step, maybe every week, to get you closer to your goal. So if you want to put in the chat, like what's important to you now, what are you learning, what's new? Are you a newbie at anything? Because there's a lot of emotions when we're new at something. And so we have to acknowledge, especially when we're professional people, we're used to being, maybe the expert in the room, but you're new at something. So it's uncomfortable. So there will be emotions with learning. So if you're trying to learn something, we have to, number one, become emotionally aware and just list the emotions 3 times a day is what's suggested. Just sit down, write them down, and then throw them away. It's not, they don't have power. They're just awareness that there are emotions toward learning. Like lately, I've been going to writing classes at the library, and I had trouble even walking in one day because I'm like, I'm not a writer. It's like, well, if you looked at my CV, I am a writer. I have written scientific, manuscripts, and I have a blog for a few years. So I am a writer, so it's just sometimes those stories we have to dispute some of those thoughts we have. And then we also have to tune in with the emotions that might be blocking us from moving forward. And then also resetting our sympathetic, parasympathetic settings so that we can focus more because we've relaxed more. So what if they're one-on-one? Usually we work all day hours. You could put in the chat, like, what's your typical work day? It's 8 hours, it's 4 hours, it's 12 hours, 16 hours. But usually, people are working long time, not taking breaks. It was amazing where I worked yesterday. I work at different buildings, but some people just, the lunchroom was quiet. People just sat and didn't talk. And I thought, that's fine. I'm good with that. I'm just going to sit and relax for a minute, get away from a desk. How many times have you sat down on a keyboard and it's all crummy because people are just like eating and typing all at once? They didn't take a break. So a lot of this we just don't learn, and it's just silly not to learn this stuff, right? So we know we have to recharge our ability to focus by putting in relaxation tools. So that can be being in nature or looking at pictures of nature, interacting with people that are renewing. So those are people that we actually like to be with. So family or friends that you enjoy their company, they are renewing. So they fill our relaxation tool so we can focus more. And then how do we tune in to what is our current setting? Because that will also determine our solution mode. So say yes or no in the chat if you ever just take a break. Do you just take a break in your workday, or do you just plow through it? You could put yes or no. When my kids were little, I just would plow through it. I wouldn't take a lunch, just try to get home as soon as possible. My kids are older now, so I take a lunch, I take a break because I'm not trying to get home to take them to whatever event or whatever was going on, whatever sport or something like this. So we've talked about finding our focus. We do that with finding fun because that's a neurologic setting that helps us build our relaxation so that when we do want to focus, we can balance that, right? So we can't only think that the brain is there for us to use it as we want. We also have to, almost like a garden, we need to give it something so that it can work for us. So here we're talking about neuromarketing. We're talking about how marketers know so much about what's going on between our ears that we need to also learn that because we're trying to work through a busy day. We're trying to get our work done so that we can put in our life what's important to us. And we want to leave an impact on this world and live completely in our gifts and our strengths. But if we're distracted and people know how to grab our attention, right now the term is attention economy. People know how to grab our attention. So how do they know? Well, we've talked about this, so let's go over it again. So they can watch our pupil size. That determines if we're focused on something. So if you're having a conversation with someone and you're close enough, you could actually watch their pupil size to see if you've lost their attention, because it'll be like a little bit bigger if they're actually focused on you, and then it'll start to get, a little bit smaller if they've moved on. But a lot of this is subconscious, like a person's not consciously thinking, I'm not paying attention to them anymore, but their brain could be all distracted. But you'll know if you're close enough to see their pupils. But neuromarketers, they have these things where they can assess people. People are aware, like they, volunteer to do this stuff, or humans are watched in stores, what our behaviors are, how often do we pause and stop and look at colors or images, because a lot of our decisions are made because of our emotional setting, and our emotional settings are influenced by images and colors and the placement of products. So it's really amazing, what they know about us and what we also need to know, so that we know how to put armor up against it and put in our days what's important to us. Okay, so we talked about finding focus and creating an impact. And how do we create an impact? We build an accountability team. We do that in my coaching groups. I call them WAGs. So those are women accountability groups. So just, if you want to email me at thebrainfresh@gmail.com, I'm glad to, send you more information. And then secondly, in order to create an impact, we have to build our own capacity to learn and change. I was in this retreat the other day with all these women docs, and they were talking about that we need time for wonder to wonder. And we were like, well, if we need time to wonder, we need like a whole day off. We need like a chef to cook for us. We need like, it's just funny. Like we just need a break if we need to actually take time to wonder. And that's so true. So put in the chat if you ever give yourself CEO time. Do you give yourself strategy time? Do you give yourself just hours a week just to think about things, take some notes, think about what's important to you, or you just scheduled. What we know about between our ears, we know that we need to take breaks throughout our workday. We need scheduled time in our workday so that we have time just to think. So no phones. You can't have your phone close. Like the suggestion is, don't even have it out where you can see it, even if it's turned off. Just put it in a drawer. You focus better. They actually did studies on that. So if you have your phone just out, we're already distracted. Every time you get distracted, there's seconds before we can focus again. So we want to decrease all the distractions we can. And we want to build guardrails for our focus. So we want to make sure we know what's important to us. You find your core values. That's the first thing we do in my coaching group. So we always find our core values, what's important to us right now. We assess our anger, because what makes us angry is actually something that means something to us. Because anger, I guess, is a secondary emotion. So when we're angry, something happened first. So we see like, what is bothering us now? What are we not okay with? What status quo is bothering us? And then what's our purpose? What brings us meaning in our days? And that will change over time. You've heard of Viktor Frankl, maybe. He's a survivor. He was a survivor of being in Auschwitz, and he is also a psychiatrist. So he's a psychiatrist before was in concentration camps, and then came out and wrote a book in 9 days. He wrote it all down, and he was writing down his observations about where he found meaning and purpose in life, even in that god-awful situation. So he has suggestions. He said, actually, suffering can bring meaning as long as it's not self-imposed suffering. But when you see something's hard, that can also help you understand what's important in life. And maybe your meaning is to support someone in that situation. Maybe your meaning is simply just to interact with people. Maybe your meaning is to be, truly you, like to use all your gifts. Okay, so we build guardrails with our attention because people are trying to take it, and that's the attention economy. They're trying to grab our attention. Okay, so what's important how do we build armor against neuromarketing? We want to feel vital, right? We want to feel like we matter. We want to feel like we have an impact with our days and our work. So we want to find focus. We do that by finding fun, because that builds our relaxation level so that we can go back to work. But it can't be all focus and all work. You're just going to be, it's the whole putting your oxygen mask on first. You're just going to be empty. You're not going to be able to come up with great solutions. So there has to be some fun. So make sure this week, you have some fun scheduled. Put it in the chat. What do you have going on this week that it's going to be fun. You're interacting with other people. It's relaxing. And then you're going to protect your melons. So that is how do you support that organ between your ears. And you could support it by bringing it out to nature, giving it good nutrition, good rest, good interactions with other people, good movements. So it's stuck up there. So we have to make sure we take care of it, right? So if you want this world to be a different place, we want everyone living fully in their gifts and strengths, because we need everyone coming up with good solutions of how to handle, all the stressors that are going on in the world today. Okay. So if you want to put in the chat, say if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer any questions. But super important to find your own focus, put up guardrails so people can't grab your attention. It's all that we have is our attention. That's the only way we're going to get things done and come up with great ideas. We also have to purposely build our relaxation kind of tank so that we can work hard and focus. But you can't only work. That's what I see a lot of people doing, working 12-hour shifts, 16-hour shifts, and just assuming you can just keep going, or just being on call regularly and just, I'm in healthcare, so this is what I see. Just this thought that you could just keep going without ever breaking and taking a break, to see like what matters. Well, our emotional setting will determine how much attention we can give to something. It will determine how we see data, and it will determine, what choices we make. It will determine our emotional regulations, even what emotions we share with other people, how we interact with other people. I mean, I know when I'm on call, I start yelling at people when I'm driving to work. So I know that when I'm tired, things are different. And so we have to just be aware of how things work between our ears so that we can build our armor against people who are trying to steal our attention. Interestingly, researchers have said when we're distracted, we are unhappy. So we can work really hard on putting up those guardrails by knowing our core values, assessing anger so that again, like what value is crossed there, and have awareness, and then know why your work is meaningful, why your actions day to day are meaningful, what is meaningful to you, what's important to you right now. That's the key, because that catches your brain's attention. And then you just put up those guardrails, just say no to everything else if it's not in your values or important to you at this time. And that may change over time. So that's something in my coaching program, in the Brain Fresh, the coaching program, that we assess regularly, because that can change over time, what is important to you. Okay. So put in the chat if you have any questions. Thank you for hanging. I appreciate your time and energy. Go ahead and follow Brain Fresh today. I like to share neuroscience so that between our ears is, understandable for us professionals, so that we know how to work with our brain as opposed to against our brain, and give it what it needs so that it can come up with big solutions, and people can live fully in their gifts and strengths during this difficult time in our world. Okay. You got this, guys. All right. Appreciate you. Thanks for stopping by. Stay well. Bye.